In the shadow of Rome's golden splendor, where marble gleamed and power reigned unchecked, a chilling spectacle unfolded. Was it love that drove an emperor to defy nature itself, or a madness that twisted a boy into a living effigy of a dead empress? The tale of Nero and Sporus, whispered in the forum's darkened corners, reveals a truth more grotesque than any myth. Beneath the imperial laurels lay a secret so perverse it defied the gods themselves, a story of obsession, mutilation, and a soul erased to sate a tyrant's grief. A haunting truth awaits its telling. In the autumn of 67 AD, Rome gleamed as the eternal heart of an empire spanning continents, its marble forums alive with the pulse of commerce and conquest. Emperor Nero, enthroned at 16, once promised a golden age, his rule a beacon of hope for 60 million subjects. Yet, absolute power corroded his soul, weaving a tapestry of paranoia and excess. Beneath the imperial splendor, a sinister tale stirred, one of a boy named Sporus, ensnared by an emperor's fractured mind. Nero's reign, marked by theatrical triumphs and lavish spectacles, hid a darkness born of grief and obsession. The story of Sporus, a youth reshaped to mirror a lost empress, unveils a history not of glory, but of cruelty and dehumanization. Within the shadowed halls of the imperial palace, where loyalty was bought and truth was malleable, a tragedy unfolded, one that would expose the grotesque cost of unchecked power. A journey into this grim chapter of Rome's past reveals not merely an emperor's descent, but the erasure of a soul caught in his wake. In the autumn of 54 AD, a boy of 16 ascended Rome's throne, his name destined to echo through the annals of infamy: Nero Claudius Caesar. Hailed as the herald of a golden age, he charmed the masses with lowered taxes, lavish spectacles, and theatrical displays that blurred the line between emperor and performer. Yet, beneath this facade of benevolence, the seeds of corruption took root. Absolute power, wielded without restraint, began to gnaw at Nero's soul, fostering paranoia and a hunger for adoration. His heart, however, found its anchor in Poppaea Sabina, a woman of radiant beauty and cunning intellect, whose ambition matched his own. Their affair, born in the shadow of Nero's loveless marriage to Octavia, was no mere dalliance. It was an obsession that consumed the emperor's every thought. Poppaea's vivacity captivated him. Her sharp political mind made her indispensable. Yet, this love was a gilded cage. Nero's devotion morphed into possessiveness, his gifts of Indian jewels and Chinese silks masking a desperate need to control. By 65 AD, their union, cemented by Octavia's divorce and a sumptuous imperial wedding, teetered on the edge of madness. During a heated dispute, some whisper over Nero's chariot races, others his theatrical follies, his rage erupted. A single brutal blow, or perhaps a relentless assault, struck Poppaea, pregnant with their child, leaving her lifeless on the palace's marble floor. Nero, the god emperor, wept over her corpse, his grief a tempest that shattered his fragile grip on sanity. The empire held its breath, for this was not the end, but the prelude to a darker descent. In the wake of Poppaea's death, Rome's emperor drifted into a twilight of grief, his mind a labyrinth of delusion and despair. Nero, once the master of an empire, now clung to the shadow of his lost empress, refusing her cremation and conversing with her embalmed remains as if she yet lived. It was in this fractured state, in the waning months of 65 AD, that his gaze fell upon Sporus, a freedman of the imperial household scarcely past boyhood. Barely 15, Sporus bore an uncanny resemblance to Poppaea, his delicate features, the curve of his cheek, the haunting familiarity of his eyes. To the Romans, such likeness whispered of divine machination, a sign of souls intertwined across the mortal veil. To Nero it was a summons to defy death itself. In Sporus he saw not a boy, but a vessel to resurrect his beloved, a canvas upon which to paint his lost obsession. The emperor's command was as swift as it was monstrous. Sporus, stripped of agency, was delivered to the imperial physicians, their instruments gleaming under torchlight in a chamber prepared for a grotesque ritual. The procedure ordered was no mere cosmetic alteration. It was castration, a brutal act to reshape a boy into the semblance of a woman. Ancient surgery, crude and merciless, offered no solace. Sporus, restrained by guards, endured agony as blades severed not just flesh, but his very identity. The risk of death from blood loss or infection loomed, yet Nero's will brooked no failure. Should Sporus survive, he would emerge forever altered, neither man nor woman, but a creation of imperial whim, condemned to live as Poppaea's echo. The physical torment was but the beginning. Nero decreed a systematic erasure of Sporus's past self, a transformation as psychological as it was corporeal. In secluded quarters of the palace, Sporus was subjected to relentless instruction. Imperial seamstresses draped him in silken gowns once destined for Poppaea, their fabrics heavy with the weight of a dead woman's memory. Jewelers adorned him with gems that had adorned her throat, each piece a shackle, binding him to her ghost. Tutors, their voices cold and precise, taught him to walk with a woman's grace, to gesture with delicate poise, to soften his speech into a feminine cadence. His hair, once unremarkable, was curled and adorned with ornaments, a daily ordeal requiring heated tools and hours of servitude. Makeup artists labored to sculpt his face, applying kohl to widen his eyes and rouge to mimic Poppaea's glow. Every mirror reflected a stranger, a meticulously crafted illusion that erased the boy Sporus had been. These lessons were not mere education, but a deliberate unmaking, each step stripping away his autonomy, his humanity, his very name. The emperor's court, complicit in this charade, referred to Sporus as Sabina, Poppaea's name now a cruel mantle forced upon him. To falter in this role was to court death. To succeed was to surrender his soul. Nero, gazing upon his creation, seemed to believe he had conquered mortality, his delusion cloaking the horror of his actions. Yet, this grotesque alchemy was but a prelude to a spectacle that would shock even Rome's jaded elite, a ceremony that would bind Sporus to his tormentor in a mockery of love. In the spring of 67 AD, Rome's imperial palace shimmered with opulence, its halls adorned with flowers from distant provinces and lit by 1,000 flickering lamps. Here, Nero staged a spectacle that defied comprehension. A wedding to Sporus, now Sabina, the boy remade to mirror his lost Poppaea. The ceremony, a grotesque parody of Roman tradition, saw Sporus veiled in silks, his altered form draped in gowns that once graced the empress. Vows were exchanged, sacred bread shared, and legal scrolls signed as courtiers masked their horror with practiced smiles. To Nero, this was no mere charade. He believed he had resurrected his beloved, his delusion blinding him to the boy's silent anguish. Sporus, trained to perfection, played his part flawlessly, his every gesture a studied mimicry of Poppaea's grace, yet each step deepened the chasm of his erased identity. As Sabina, Sporus was granted a household, a retinue, and a litter befitting an empress. Yet these trappings were chains. At state banquets, he sat beside Nero, expected to embody Poppeia's spirit, responding to memories that were not his own. Nero, lost in his fantasy, addressed him as his dead wife, recounting moments Sporus could never know, his voice a blend of tenderness and tyranny. The court, complicit in this grim theatre, maintained the fiction, and their whispers stifled by fear of the emperor's wrath. Sporus's existence became a relentless performance, each day a tightrope walk where a single misstep could mean death. Yet beneath his polished facade, a quiet melancholy grew, a flicker of the boy he had been, buried under layers of imposed femininity. By 68 AD, Nero's excesses, his theatrical tours, his squandered treasury, ignited rebellion across the empire. Governors and senators, weary of his erratic rule, turned against him. The Praetorian Guard, once his shield, declared him an enemy of the state. Fleeing Rome with a dwindling band of loyalists, Nero clung to Sporus, unable to abandon the living spectre of his obsession. In a villa beyond the city's walls, as enemies closed in, Nero's grandeur crumbled, his plans oscillating between defiance and despair. Sporus, ever the silent witness, stood at the heart of this collapse, a symbol of an emperor's unraveling. Yet, even as Nero faced his end, the boy's ordeal was far from over, for the empire's shifting tides would soon cast him into new hands. In the shadow of Nero's fall, where power crumbled and obsession reigned, this grim tale seeks kindred spirits drawn to history's darkest truths. A gesture of approval, a commitment to future chronicles, or a note from distant lands revealing where these echoes resonate would bind this narrative to a wider world. Yet the tragedy of Sporus, adrift in an empire's ruin, remains unfinished. As Nero's blood stained the villa's floor in 68 AD, Rome descended into chaos, its throne a prize for warring pretenders. Sporus, the emperor's crafted empress, became a spoil of conquest, passed like a relic among the empire's new masters. First claimed by Nymphidius Sabinus, then by Otho, and finally by Vitellius, he remained Sabina, his identity shackled to Poppeia's ghost. Each successor, mirroring Nero's delusion, draped him in feminine finery, demanding he embody the dead empress in their courts. Stripped of agency, Sporus moved through these halls of power, his silence a mask for a soul eroded by years of imposed falsehood. His delicate frame, once a boy's, now bore the weight of Rome's depravity, each glance in a mirror, a reminder of his obliterated self. In 69 AD, under Vitellius' fleeting reign, Sporus faced his final degradation. The new emperor, eager to sate the mob's appetite, decreed a public spectacle in the Colosseum, a mythological reenactment, steeped in violence and humiliation, with Sporus as its unwilling centerpiece. To be paraded before thousands, his suffering transformed into entertainment, was a violation beyond endurance. In this moment, Sporus, no more than 20, reclaimed the one choice his tormentors could not deny. By poison, likely sipped in the shadowed recesses of a palace chamber, he ended his life, his death a silent defiance against a world that had stripped him bare. No records note his final thoughts, but his act spoke louder than any chronicle. A refusal to be further debased, a spark of humanity enduring beneath layers of enforced artifice. Sporus's suicide closed a chapter of unimaginable cruelty, yet his name lingered as a whisper in Rome's annals, a symbol of power's grotesque excesses. The boy who became an empress, who bore the weight of an emperor's madness, left no legacy of his own, only a void where his dreams once resided. Yet, in his final act, a deeper truth stirred, awaiting its place in history's somber reckoning. In the annals of Rome, where glory and infamy intertwine, the tale of Sporus stands as a somber monument to power's corrosive reach. Absolute dominion, unchecked by conscience, transformed an emperor's love into a crucible of cruelty, forging a boy into a hollow effigy of a lost empress. Sporus, stripped of name and self, bore the weight of Nero's madness, his life a testament to the fragility of humanity in the shadow of tyranny. His final act, choosing death over degradation, whispered a defiant truth. Even in the deepest subjugation, a spark of agency endures. Yet history remembers him not as a soul, but as a symbol of imperial excess, his dreams lost to the empire's unyielding hunger. Across 2 millennia, this tragedy endures, a cautionary echo of the cost exacted by those who wield power without restraint. In the silent ruins of Rome, where marble crumbles and laurels fade, Sporus's unwritten story lingers, a ghostly reminder that behind every chronicle of grandeur lies a human heart, broken by the weight of another's ambition.